So I'm delighted to welcome today to Susan Payton, the author of Business of Stories that you'll see on a bookcase at the back. And here's my copy of the book, if you can see it. So basically, you'll see that basically I've marked copies in the book. And why storytelling is important to me is that believe that even though I'm an accountant, I think accounts are all about storytelling. It's how do we interpret those figures for our clients, our customers to actually understand them. And the way to do that is by telling stories. And I'm
100%.
reminded of a quote, which is a Seth Godin quote, that says, "Marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make,
Mm,
but about the stories that you tell." And
mm.
I'm delighted, Susan, that you've got time to spend with us today. And you'll probably recognize the phrase which come from one of your podcasts. So I'd love you to share with us what has led you here doing what you do now. What has that journey looked like for you?
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a joy to come and talk about storytelling. I can do it all day long. Um, what led me here specifically was around 2014. I was looking to start a new business. I wasn't 100% sure what it was going to be, but I knew I had lots of things in my background that I could help people with. I'd always worked for myself. I'd worked in media, I'd worked in television and radio. I had lots of different skills and experience. So I wanted to start something new, and I wasn't too sure what it was. So I started a group. I started kind of putting a community together of women in business. And this back in 2014, we didn't have 101 Facebook groups, right? So it was quite a new thing to start a Facebook group. And I started a Facebook group called the Business of Mums. And it was for mums who either had their own business or wanted to start their own business. Um, and the group grew very quickly. I had about 1,500 women in there very quickly. And, people loved it and they were all talking to each other. And I used to do little interviews with them. And we had lots of experts coming in and sharing resources and all sorts of things. So the group was going well. But my big plan was that once I had people inside the community, I would offer my coaching, I would offer my services. I didn't really, this was the problem. I didn't really know what I was going to coach them on though. Like I knew there was something. I knew that I could help. I knew that, like I said, I'd always run my own business. I'd always been very independent. I'd always found my way through. I had a property portfolio I was running. I had lots of different things going on. So I thought if I get all of these people together and I work out what they need and maybe what I could help them do, then I'll grow from there. But of course, because I didn't know what I was offering, nobody else knew what I was offering. So nobody bought my coaching. And I was about a year into the business and or not even the business, it wasn't a business, it was a group. I wasn't earning any money from it. And I'd been building it for a while and people were coming in and they were loving it. But I realized that it wasn't going anywhere. Nobody was buying anything from me, nobody was buying my coaching, and that I needed to do something different. And I needed to get clear. I needed to understand who my ideal client is and what am I offering and what's the promise? What am I helping them achieve? What's the transformation I can help them get? And I needed to get clear on all of that, but I didn't really know how to back then. And I was fishing around and I was reading all the business books and I was doing the courses and trying to kind of work out what it all was. And then I decided that I was going to go into the group and it was a bit of a do or die moment. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go in and I'm going to be really honest. I'm going to just say to everybody, look, this is my story. This is who I am. This is what's led me here to this point. This is why I started the group. This is what I'm bringing to the table. This is where I'd love the group to go. But I'm little bit lost with it all, and I'm not kind of, sure how to move forwards with it. And I thought, I'm just going to be honest. So I did. I went into the group and I told my story. And it really was a story of ups and downs because we've all got that story, right? And the bumps and the bruises along the way, as I called it. And I shared that story very honestly, very openly, quite vulnerably, shared it. And then I had a moment of panic. Then I thought, maybe that was a bit too honest. Maybe I shouldn't have shared it all. Like, maybe people won't want to work with me at all now. And I also thought, and actually, does anybody want to read my story? Like, really, do people, everybody's busy, everybody's running their business. Like, why? It's a bit presumptuous of me to think that people are going to, you know, put down their tools and sit and read my story. But within, I don't know, minutes of sending the story out, publishing it in the group, I started to get messages. And I got messages from women saying, wow, your story is so inspiring. Like, and your story is so similar to mine. Like, I really resonate with it. And they started sharing little bits about their story, and they started, you know, interacting with me and asking me about things that had happened. And people started asking me how they could work with me, which blew my mind because that wasn't even why I'd done the post or why I'd shared my story. I'd shared my story to just say, look, I'm going to be really open book about this. This is who I am. This is where I'm at. I want to see what I can help you guys with. But within a couple of weeks, I had 6 paying clients. And all I had done differently was go into the group and instead of offering my coaching, instead of talking about come and book a call with me and I'll tell you how I can help you and we'll make a plan and I'll help you take steps and all of those things that I'd been saying for months that hadn't worked. All I'd done differently was actually put all of that to one side, go into the group and share my story and just talk about what had got me through the hard times, the tough bits, the times when I felt like I was going around in circles, the times when I felt like I was out of my depth, the times when I was out of my comfort zone, and also the things that had gone well, right? It was a balance. But people really related to it. And people even said to me, oh, you've made me feel inspired to tell my own story. So people started coming to the group and telling their story. And to cut a long story short, the business of mums became the business of stories. When I saw that actually how powerful the stories were and the difference it was making, and the whole group dynamic and vibe, everything, energy changed the minute I did that because everybody started sharing their story. And so by the end of 2015, I realized that storytelling was actually the way that I could help people. It was the missing piece for so many business owners, who are out there and they're trying to sell their stuff and they're trying to market themselves and they're trying to, make offers, but they're not really using the power of storytelling. And stories are one of the most powerful things that connect us as humans. So to not be using storytelling is missing a huge opportunity to connect with people on a completely different level than your average, come buy my stuff type post is going to do. So yeah, it became the business of stories, and I went on to work one-to-one with businesses for many, many years until 2022 when I wrote my book and everything changed.
So do you think your story, because it was authentic, because you were being vulnerable, that's what related to people, that's what people understood?
It was because the thing when you share your story, and people have this idea sometimes that, oh, your story's only interesting if it's, rags to riches, if it's some, really dramatic story that's fit for a Hollywood blockbuster film, otherwise anything else is just boring. It's so not true. Everybody's story is fascinating. The thing with stories is, and the stories that relate are actually the very ordinary, everyday, relatable stories, right? Most people can't relate to the rags to riches and this is how I got to my $1 million business, right? What they relate to is the single mum trying to juggle it all, trying to be there for her child and run a business, you know? The I talked about when I had a property portfolio and then the property market crashed. And I literally got left with 5 properties in negative equity overnight. And the stress of it made me very ill. I just talked about what got me through that. We were saying before this call, right, that we've all got through and survived and overcome 100% of the challenges that we faced. And when we hear stories of other people on that journey, on that rocky road with all its ups and downs and twists and turns, and we just hear how they got through it and how they've come out the other side to face the next challenge, right? You never just get to the rainbow at the end and it's all, unicorns and
It's only in the Hollywood films that we have a
only in the
rainbow.
Hollywood films, exactly. So we're all on this journey all the time. We're all facing new challenges. We're all learning. We're all growing. We're all getting the curveballs coming in and knocking us over, and we have to get back up again. And those stories are the stories that people want to hear. They relate to them. They connect with them. They feel more connected to you. And one thing I've really learned over the years is the more of those stories I share, the more honestly I share them. And I still share them to this day. I shared an email literally this week about how I'd got into a bit of a pickle with my finances a month ago in my business, and I had to do something very quickly to bring some cash into my business. You'll get this, you're an accountant.
Yeah.
I had to do something very, very quickly. So I actually came up with an offer that was £195, and I set out to sell it to 100 people, and I sold it to 100 people in 2 weeks. And that put me back on track with my finances. But I share all of that in my emails, in my posts. I'm very, very honest. And I always get emails from people saying, wow, that's so inspiring. That makes me see what's possible for me.
So would you say that's what inspired you to write the book? Because obviously, if you write a book, and they say everybody's got a book in them, don't they? There's a book for all of us to write. Is that why you wrote the book? Because it would be more widely received, it'd be more widely available to people to learn your approach in the business of stories?
Yeah, there's two main reasons that I wrote it. One was exactly that. I just wanted to reach more people. I've been 7 years, I've been working one to one with business owners like yourself, small team, wanting to realizing that they're not sharing their story enough. They want to share, whether it's their brand story behind their business or it's their own personal journey. So I did that for 7 years, but I got to the point where I wanted to work with more people. I wanted to reach more people. I wanted to teach, people how to do this for themselves, not just do it for people. I wanted to create courses and programs and workshops and things. And the first step to do that was to create some kind of process to actually work out what is it that I do with clients that helps me, craft these stories that then they can use to attract more dream clients. What's the process? What am I actually doing? Because up to that point, really, it was all in my head. So I had to create the process. And it was the creating that 7-step process that I realized this is a book, actually. This could be my book. This could have my process in it. So then I'll reach way more people. And in fact, it has sold all over the world, which still blows my mind. Um, and people will be able to either read the book and go through it on their own, or people can read the book and then come and have me help them go through the process. But it was that wanting to transition from working people with people one to one to working and reaching many people. That book was what allowed me to do that, was publishing the book. But the other reason that I wanted to write the book was because there's a lot of people out there, and not just marketers. I've even saw a post literally yesterday or the day before. There's a lot of people saying, nobody wants to know your story. Nobody cares about you, right? It's all about the customer. Just talk about the customer. Talk about them, what they want. They don't care about you. And that is so not true. If that was true, then if you wanted a coach, say you wanted I don't know if you've got a business coach, right? But say you wanted one. If it was true that you do not care who they are, you would just find a business coach and you'd employ them. But you wouldn't do that. You would want to get on a call. You would want to see if you get on with them. You would want to see if you connect with them. You would want to see if you like them, if you feel like you could work with them, if you feel like they get you, if you feel like they understand you and where you want to go. You'd want to feel like you get that they can get you there. So to say that nobody cares about you is complete rubbish. What I think the mistake that some people make is they just talk about themselves and they are maybe, talking about their awards and their qualifications and, their credentials and all the amazing things that they've done. And yes, that can be a bit of a turn off because somebody doesn't necessarily need to know all of that. Um, but it's not about that. And it's not about making it about you. It's about sharing your stories so that people get to know you, get a feel for who you are, a sense of what you're about, what makes you tick, what you stand for, if you're a good fit for them. So you're sharing stories so that people can see whether or not they feel connected to you. And you're sharing stories to make other people feel seen and heard and understood and show them what's possible for them. So you're not sharing your stories for you. You're not sharing your stories to brag. You're sharing your stories for your ideal client, right? And to show them who you are, what you're about, and that you get them and that you can help them get to where they want to get to. So I actually talk about having a balance of three key stories, right? So there are your personal stories, right? They are the stories that are all about, you, your experiences, your insights, your lessons, your perspective, your unique blend, your unique perspective, your things you've done, lessons you've learned, the curveballs, the challenges, the wins, all of it, all the things that make you you. And they are your personal stories. And I share lots of those, right? People always come on calls with me to work with me and say, I feel like I know you really well. I mean, I tell the most random stories, right? Um, um, so I think they're important. They're important for people to get to know who you are. And they don't all have to be great, big, long form, take people on a journey. They could literally be a few sentences, right, about something that's happened or something that, was funny or whatever. So there's your personal stories. Then there's your business stories. Like businesses and brands don't just pop up from nowhere. There's always been a journey, and that journey is full of stories. And every business is run by humans, and humans have stories. So there's stories about your business, why it exists, what problem it exists to solve, what it stands for, why it exists, all of the things about your business and what it does and who for. And then there's your customer stories. And that's really important. Like you really need to understand your customer story. And I'm not talking about the usual, demographics. Where do they live? What do they drive? Where do they shop? I'm talking about their story. Like what is going on for them right now? Where are they? How are they feeling? What are they thinking? What do they want? What's in the way of them having that? And how's that making them feel that they can't have that thing that they want, that there's something in the way? And where do they want to be? How do they want to change their story? Where are they stuck? So it's really understanding their story and where you fit into their story, right? We can't just go crash banging into people's stories and just announcing, hey, come and buy my stuff. We need to understand their story so that we can actually talk to them about where they are and show them that we get them and make them feel seen and heard and understood and talk about the challenge and talk about how you can help them get to where they want to go and share the bits of your story that show them how comes you get it. Like maybe you've been there too, or maybe you have worked with lots of people and you understand what they're going through. So stories are just such a powerful way of showing people what you can help them do rather than just telling them, right? You can show them with stories, your stories, stories about your business, growth, how you've evolved, how you've developed your process, how you help clients and who your ideal clients are and what their story are and how you help them change their story.
So I was always taught stories sell, facts tell,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
true. And I
Yeah.
think the British psyche is we don't really we don't really share our emotions. That's not normal for us, is it? But I think in your stories, you actually have to share your emotions about how you were feeling at certain stages, because actually people identify with that. And there's also the Maya Angelou quote, isn't there? People don't remember what you said, people don't remember what you did, but people remember how you made them feel. And I
Exactly.
think feelings is all important, because I think when we share our stories, we all had emotions at a certain time. It was, it's uplifting. It was, we were down in the doldrums, that type of thing. And I think people identify with that because they are feeling those same emotions that we're all feeling. But as British people, we don't necessarily volunteer those, do we? We don't necessarily share them.
No, absolutely. And that is the parts of your story that are very relatable. It's when I was telling you my story about when I realized that my business wasn't a business, I often tell the story of sitting at the kitchen table with my
With your
husband
husband and a
one
glass of
evening,
wine.
glass of wine, feeling a bit tearful and admitting out loud to him, but more to myself, actually, I don't have a business. Like, who am I kidding? I'm doing all the things, I'm keeping myself busy, but I don't actually have a business. And I can't tell you how many people have told me that they related to that so much that, that they've been there.
Well, in my career, I've actually told people that the business doesn't make any money. You've got a choice to do. Are you happy to subsidize it, or is it time to actually make that decision to say we're going to move on, do something different?
Yeah.
And I think um, not a lot of people would actually volunteer that information. But I think if you build relationships with people, we owe them honesty and trust to actually tell them the truth.
Yeah.
There's no
And
point papering over the cracks, is there?
no, definitely. And we've all, I don't believe there's anybody in business who hasn't had a time where they feel like, just things aren't working. They're doing stuff and it's just not working the way that they want to work. And they're the bits of your story that people relate to. Not that I was sat at my kitchen table, but how I was feeling in that moment.
So if we talk about the book, okay, you mentioned something called a golden thread, and your golden thread is quite important, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of golden threads. The golden threads are what link, you and your ideal client. Um, what parts of your story they're going to really resonate with. What parts of their story, come back to parts of yours. It's just finding those little, I even get people to do an exercise when I'm working with clients. And, on one side of the paper, we've got their story, and on the other side of the paper, we've got the customer story. And we literally draw little threads between them to find those connections, because this all goes back to making your stories relevant and relatable for your ideal client. You need to just find those little golden threads. So it doesn't mean that somebody else had to be sat at the kitchen table having a glass of wine with their husband for me to find the golden thread. The golden thread is exactly what I was just saying. Times in their business where they felt lost, times when they felt like they were doing all the right things but nothing was happening, times when they felt like they didn't have the clarity, they weren't getting across, what they do and who for. Nobody was buying. They didn't feel like they had a business. They're all the little golden threads that connect my story, that will make them hear my story and think, oh, she gets it. She's been there. She would get me. She would understand where I am right now. And look at her now. Like, she's got past that. She's moved on. She's had a journey with lots of learnings and, things along the way that she can help me with. I remember hearing a story. A coach was, I was thinking of working with a coach, and he shared a story about how he lost his very first business, how he went bankrupt and he failed, and he talked about how he failed and what he learned from it, and how much it enabled him to go on and not make those same mistakes again. And I thought, that's the kind of coach I want to work with. I want to work with a coach that has failed and has learned from it, and can bring all of those lessons to me as a client and help me understand, what's the word? Benefit from all of that experience that he's got from all of those years and all of those, learnings, and then what he did differently and what he improved. And, he could help me avoid a lot of mistakes potentially that another coach might not necessarily know how to help me avoid. So actually, him sharing that story, which, a lot of people would not want to share that story because they'd worry about being judged, worry about people thinking, oh, I don't want to work with a coach that's, been bankrupt. But actually, that's the very thing that made me want to work with him because I thought, wow, he will really have learned so much from that experience, that lived experience that he can help me with. Um, so yeah, the golden threads are just finding those things like how, if you think about your customer story, right, your ideal client story, what's going on for them. Maybe they're feeling lost, maybe they're feeling overwhelmed, maybe they're feeling really stressed, frustrated, whatever it is. So what are the parts of your story that you can show that you get that you felt like that you've had to navigate that yourself? Because that again just helps with the connection. It helps people to see, oh, she is like me. She gets me. She has experienced something similar. She will understand. She will know how to get me past that. So
So,
that's when I talk about golden threads, that's what I'm talking about.
so when I read your book, it took me back to school, the old Venn diagrams and the
Hmm.
three circles overlapping the bit in the middle,
Yeah.
which you call your sweet spot. So
Yes.
I think what you're saying is that basically where we have that overlap, so where we have your own story, your customer story, and your business story, and when they all overlap, that's where we have the sweet spot in the middle. And from the sweet spot, is that where we will gain our golden threads?
Yeah, so I guess so again, if you go back to my bit of paper and we've got the customer, you've got you on one side, you've got customer on the story, then got all these little golden threads, that you felt lost, they feel lost, kind of finding those connections between our stories. And then there's going to be a central sweet spot right in the middle, where all of those lines overlap. And it is that overlap, but it's your personal story, it's your business story, and it's your customer story, and they all come together. And that sweet spot in the middle is where you know exactly who you're talking to. You know exactly what stories are going to resonate. You can tell the right story to the right person at the right time in their journey, and you know that it will resonate with them because you've unpacked those stories and you understand their stories so well. You've got your golden threads, and then you got that sweet spot in the middle. And I always get clients to really define and articulate exactly what that sweet spot is, because when you know what it is, then it can become the chorus of your song. Right. So you've probably heard me talk about this before, but I always think of messaging a bit like a song. And when you listen to a song, you've got all the verses, right? And you hear the verses, and that kind of takes you on the journey. That's the story that the singer wants to share with you, or the songwriter wants to share with you. The verses take you on the journey, but every verse comes back to the chorus, right? There's always a chorus of the song, and it's that central message, it's that central theme. And the verses only work if they keep coming back to the chorus, right? So when you're writing a song, I've never written a song, but I would imagine when you're writing a song and you're writing the verses, you've got to have that central thing that everything comes back to, which is the chorus. The chorus is often the title of the song, right? I always use an example of Queen and We Are the Champions, right? It's the name of the song, and the chorus is basically We Are the Champions sung about 6 times. So everything is bringing it back to that. And that is how you keep all of your stories and your content and your messaging aligned and consistent around this one central sweet spot, core message, chorus of your song, whatever you want to call it. It's having that. And I see a lot of business owners, and they're ticking the boxes. I've told a story today. I've done a post on social media today. I've written an email to my list today. I've done some content. But the problem is they're writing these different verses, they're putting these different bits of content out, but there's no chorus. There's nothing that's actually bringing it all together. So people can't really easily see, that's what they do. That's the thing. I get it. I can say it in a sentence. I can tell somebody else about it. It's really, really clear. A lot of business owners don't know what the chorus of their song is.
But presumably your story can change, can it?
Your
As your
story,
as your business evolves.
As your business evolves, your stories change, of course. I mean, your core story, your story of, what led you here, doing what you now do is not going to change. And that's a story that it will evolve, but what's happened in the past won't change. But it is a story you want to be able to share. So when you come onto a podcast like yours and somebody says, you say to your guest, what's the story that's led you here, doing what you now do, you want to have that story ready to share, of course. But yeah, absolutely. Your stories change and evolve as you do, as your business does. And your messaging can evolve. The chorus of your song can change. Like it doesn't have to stay the same, but it has to be clear what it is. So if what you do changes, if you change your niche, if you change your ideal client, which does happen, I often work with clients, and actually, as we go through the process, as we start unpacking their stories and, going back through their journey, sometimes they get an aha moment and they go, oh, that's who I want to work with. Like that's actually, I've literally had it this week. I had somebody who thought her ideal clients was CEOs and founders. And she sort of helps them with strategy and dealing with the emotional stuff that comes up when you're a leader, that you don't necessarily talk to anybody else about. So she had this kind of all wrapped up in a messaging that wasn't that clear. So we started going through my process and working on stuff. And then she had a bit of a shift and she realized that wasn't actually her niche, and she wanted to work with these people, and actually she wanted her messaging to be this, and we got a lot of clarity by going through the process. But the answers are always in the story, in your stories. When people say, I don't know who my ideal client is, or I don't know if I should niche or what my niche should be, or I don't even know, I'm not 100% sure what to offer or what my clients want, I always say, well, the answers are in your stories. They're not out there somewhere, right? We're not plucking this out of thin air. The answers are always in your stories. But you're absolutely right. Your story evolves as you evolve, as your business evolves. And so you want to keep sharing that new and evolved story too.
So I mentioned to you that I think there's a fourth story which you speak about or you write about in your book,
Mm,
which potentially is probably the most important story of all, isn't it?
yes, absolutely. And that is the story you're telling yourself, right? That is the story in your head. And when I wrote my book, that is like chapter 11, I think. It's the very last chapter in the book, is the story in your head. Um, and if I was writing my book again, I would probably put it at the beginning. I would probably make it the first chapter because when I work with clients or people go through my course or people come into my group program, it's the first thing we look at. Because if the story you're telling yourself is a negative one, right? If it's not a good one, if it's not making you feel good, then you're not going to want to put yourself out there. You're not going to want to go and share your stories. You're not going to want to be honest and real and vulnerable. If you're telling yourself that, nobody wants to hear your story, or that, your story's boring, or that, it's yeah, whatever the negative stories are, and there's lots of them. People worry that they're bragging. People worry that they're trying to draw attention to themselves. People worry that they're making it all about them. And I often think this goes back to childhood, right? This goes back to when we were young and we're told not to be too confident and not to stand out and not to be too, whatever, over the top. Don't be too much, be quiet, sit down. So I think a lot of us have this fear, and I did for a long time, and I had to work on it. I had to change that story in my head. So it is a big part of the work that I do now. Luckily, many years ago, I trained in advanced NLP and life coaching. And so I'm very good at reframing things for people and helping them see that actually, well, most of the people that you think are judging you are not judging you at all. They're far too wrapped up in what's going on in their own story, right? Now their own life and business and health and wealth and everything else is happening to be worrying about what you're doing. But also just helping people to just change that soundtrack in their head to one that makes them feel good, right? To one that's uplifting, that's encouraging, that makes them feel excited to show up for their ideal clients. And it's a big part of the work that we do inside Storytelling Mastery, which is my group program, is we keep checking in. What's the story in your head? Do we need to look at that? Do we need to rewrite it? Do we need to make sure that, there's a better one? And that just takes a bit of practice. That just means you just need to notice when the story in your head is not making you feel good, when it's not helpful, when it's not kind, when you're comparing yourself to other people, when you're doom scrolling on social media, right? It's just noticing that and then thinking, actually, that's not helping me get in a good place. I need to be more intentional about what I'm focusing on so that I can feel good about showing up and show up for my ideal clients the way that I want to and the way that they need me to.
I think you explain it in the book about a soundtrack, don't you? You call it
Hmm.
potentially it's a negative soundtrack, isn't it? And
Mm.
you cite a book in there. I think I can't remember what it's called, but you
Yes,
cite
it's called soundtracks.
a soundtrack, is it?
Yes. John Acuff. Yes, he talks about changing the soundtrack in your head. Yeah.
which which is almost like playing a different record type thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? You,
exactly. Because that's all it is. It's a broken record, right? It's going over and over and over again. And the very first step to change it is to notice it. Like, oh, that's interesting. Like I used to have a really debilitating fear of public speaking. Right? Like really, I would almost be physically sick before I got on stage. And then when I got on stage, I'd be shaking, I'd be nervous. And the way that I changed that was realizing that that was making it about me, right? That was going, oh, what if people judge me? What are people going to think of me? What if people see that I'm nervous? What if, all these things that meant that I was making it about me. So when I realized that, and in fact, it was a client that helped me do this and helped me realize that actually, if I switch that light round, right, instead of pointing that spotlight at me and making it all about me, if I actually switched it round and thought about who is the person that woke up this morning who is, just doesn't know what to do. They know that something's got to change. They're not getting the clients that they want. Their content isn't getting any engagement. They're putting offers out. They're not getting any sales. Where I was, right, back in 2015, they've woken up today and they are ready to do something different. They're like, this isn't working. I can't carry on doing the same thing. I need to do something new. And then they come to a talk I'm doing, or they come to a masterclass, or they go on my podcast, or they read my book, or they, get an email from me, and they realize that actually I can change this story. I can turn things around. There's a missing piece, right? And that missing piece is storytelling. So all I have to do is show up and keep talking about how impactful storytelling is, how powerful it is, so that those people can find me and hear what I'm saying, and then either go and read my book and do it on their own, or come and work with me and get my help. But it's not about me. And when I stopped making it about me, that changed everything.
that was that was that defining moment, the epiphany for you, wasn't it?
One of many defining moments, but yeah, for sure, definitely. Realizing that, and I still do it to this day. Whenever I start to second guess, because we all do it sometimes, doubt myself, or, oh, start replaying something in my head, I think, oh, look, that's interesting. Started making it about me then. That's not helpful. That's not going to get me where I want to go. That's not going to help me to reach more people. I won't make it about me. I need to tune into my customer and what they need me to do right now.
Because what I've learned is those situations where we all have those difficult conversations and we all try and play them out in our mind. And what happens if they say this? What happens if they say that? But
Yeah.
invariably, the truth is far removed. Whatever we thought was going to happen generally doesn't happen, does it?
Yes. Yes, exactly. It's just that story in our head. And when we can start to be a bit more intentional, a bit more in control about what that story is, it can be life-changing.
So we're coming to the end of our talk today. So are there any pearls of wisdoms you'd like to share with people who are listening to us?
Um, yes, couple of things. One is that stories are one of the most powerful things that connects us as humans. So if you're not using them in your business, in your content, in your marketing, in your sales conversations, in your everything you're creating and putting out there, if you're not using storytelling, then you are missing out on a huge opportunity to connect with people in a way that no slick sales page or marketing copy can, right? So number one thing is to think about how powerful storytelling is, how impactful it is, maybe somebody's story that you've heard that's really inspired you, and then think about how you can start to do more of that in your own business. And then the other thing that I always like to just say to people, which is kind of going back to that, not making it about you, making it about your customer, is your role in your customer's story, right? So going back to when I talked about the three different stories, and you've got your customer story, and I said, you've got to understand where you fit in your customer story. Your part that you play in their story, your role is to be the guide, right? To be the person that can help them get from where they are now to where they want to be. Like Yoda did, right? For Luke Skywalker. Yoda didn't go and do it for Luke. Luke had to do it all himself. But Yoda was the guide that helped him see that he had everything he needed inside him, right? Helped him to find that strength in him to go and do what he needed to do, to put the work in, to, stay the course, to get to where he needed to go. So you are the guide in your customer story. And if you remember that, it makes it a lot easier to show up, to be visible, to talk about the things that you want to talk about. And even to think about how you work with people. What is the best solution for them? What is the best way for them to get the result they want? Stand in that role of being the guide, because that's what your client needs, right? And sometimes when I work with business owners, although we're working on their stories, we often I look at their offers, or I look at their website, and I look at their pricing, and I think you're not standing in the role of guide, because you're giving your clients loads of different options and they don't know what's the right thing for them. So you're actually just confusing them and overwhelming them. Whereas really what a guide does, I mean, Yoda didn't say to Luke, well, you could do this, or you could do that, or you could do that. What a guide says is, okay, I see you, I understand you, I see where you are now, I see where you want to go. This is the journey we need to go on. This is the path that we need to go down. This is what it looks like. This is what I need from you. This is the commitment. These are the, expectations. This is what you can expect from me. And this is where we're going to be at the end. This is what is possible for you. And that's how I think when we approach business like that, when we understand our role, and we want to the best for our clients, and we need to show up for them in that role, then again, I think everything changes and people are much more inclined to share those stories in a way that positions them as someone that can be the guide in their customer story.
I think what I've seen over the years is a lot of people, business owners, think they're the hero in
Yes,
the story,
yes,
and
exactly.
they're not, are
They're
they?
not. No, not at all. And that can be a big problem when people think they're the hero, because that's when you get the people who are there talking about their rewards and their, all the amazing things, and this is why you need to come and work with me, and here's my a story. And this is where, people get a little bit confused and think, oh, that's not what people want. You're right, that's not what people want. People do want you to share stories, but from the role of guide. You're not the hero, you're right, not in their story.
So for me, what I've learned over the years is that what I do is I would suggest to people that if I was you, this is what I would do, this is what I would go for, and a lot of professionals are afraid to do that because they think they're imposing. But actually, if I've got my client's interest at heart,
Yeah.
then actually there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends what you do and it depends who your clients are. But certainly, people who are coaches, they often don't tell people what to do, but they ask them the right questions and they help them get to, to get the clarity, get the confidence, whatever they need to get to where they want to get to. I think the gray area is when people are not stepping into that guide role and they say, oh, we're supposed to be doing XYZ and my client wants to do this. And then I say to them, well, who's the guide here? Who's the person that you're the one that's helping them get to where they want to go? You know how to get them there. So it's your role is to go back to them and say, this is the way that I think this needs to happen, and here's why. And share a story about someone else who was in this position and how you helped them get there. And, so yeah. And that's why storytelling is so powerful, right? Is you don't have to go back to somebody and say, no, I think you're wrong. I think we should do it like this. You can say, well, let me tell you about a client that I had, and this is where, and this is where we got them to, and this is why that would be the best way for you.
So it's been lovely talking to you today, Susan. And thank you very much. And finally,
Oh,
if
thank you
someone
for
wanted
having
to
me.
get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do it?
Well, you can email me, Susan at thebusinessofstories.com, or you can go onto my website, thebusinessofstories.com. There's plenty of freebies and things on there that can help if you want to get going, including a download. You can download my book for free. Or I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn as Susan Payton with an A, UK.
And can I suggest what's been really beneficial for me is your podcast. And
Oh,
I
yes.
think there's lots of learnings and lessons for all of us in that podcast, which
Thank
is the
you.
Business of Stories podcast, isn't it?
Yes, it's the Business of Stories with Susan Payton.
Yeah.
If you just put the business of stories in, I don't think, because my podcast is relatively new, I don't think I come out at the top. But if you put the business of stories and my name, then you'll definitely find it. But yes, it's on Apple, Spotify, all the
And
main.
and I've read your book, I listened to your podcast, and they're wonderful. And
Thank
as I
you.
said, there's lots of learnings in there. Because
Thank
generally
you.
I walk to work every morning, I listen to a podcast and listen to an
Right.
episode just about the right time. And what I was going to end with is a Steve Jobs quote. I don't know if you presumably know the Steve Jobs quote that says, "The storyteller is the most powerful person
Yeah,
in the world, as they set the vision, values, and agenda for generations yet to come." And I think that's what's important to
absolutely.
us. And I
Yeah.
would like to thank you on behalf of the business community for the work that you're doing and how you've actually shared the power of stories. So thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much.